Good evening, friends. We have gathered together this evening to celebrate the life of our conductor emeritus, Dr. Samuel Grubb. I acknowledge the presence of the choristers, friends, and family members who are attending this remembrance meeting. There are special people in our lives who never leave us, even after they are gone, and Dr. Samuel Grubb is one such. It was a privilege to have known him, and my association with him was even more special as I joined the Madras Musical Association as a chorister when he was the conductor way back in the year 2005. The music of Dr. Grubb's life does not end with his passing. Today we stand in that space between the notes, a space that makes room for presence in a new way, a space from which God is making all things new. The music of Dr. Grubb's life now plays in a very different key. Dr. Grubb, you will remain with us in spirit until we meet up once again on the heavenly shore. May I request all of us to observe a minute's silence in his memory. The life given to us by nature is short, but the memory of a life well spent is eternal. I now invite the patron of the Madras Musical Association, Dr. Ravi Santosham, to share his eulogy.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you, Madam President and the Executive Committee members for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts of eulogy for my buddy, Samuel Grubb. I have known Grubb for half a century or more. In many respects, as a conductor of the Emmanuel Methodist Church, as a member of the GAD quartet, which became a quintet, as a conductor of the MMA choir, and as a close friend, as a doctor, and sometimes as a patient. Recently, a publication asked me to share a few thoughts about Grubb, do a write-up about him. So I jotted down a few memories of myself and Dr. Grubb and regarding his voice. So today I'll confine myself to Grubb and the Madras Musical Association because that will be more relevant. The year was 1989. MMA had a plethora of conductors then. Kalyan was there, Jabez, Mrs. Santwan, Raj Samuel. Kalyan was preparing to migrate to Bahrain. Raj was preparing to migrate to Scotland. Mrs. Santwan and Jabez had their own choirs and they wanted to concentrate on that. As a result, MMA didn't have a conductor. Just then, Grubb had landed from Libya and the writing was on the wall. Grubb had to take over the Madras Musical Association as a conductor. There were a few faithful left in the choir, Solly and Mata, Jerry Tamba, Augustine, Billy, Grace, Ross, Belinda, Keith. So most of the others had gone to the MPCS because a stalwart was conducting there. Those of us who were left behind, for us, the association was more important than an individual. Now, Grubb had a singular agenda to build the choir. This was more important to him than anything else, and build the choir he did. He used to attend EMC practices on Sunday morning and coax everyone to come for Tuesday evening practices. It wasn't easy for him. Most of us, unlike most of you guys who are presently in the choir, couldn't read music. I mean, we didn't have YouTube and stuff like that to learn. We could harmonize a bit, but we were not good sight readers. So Grubb's task was even more difficult. But succeeded, he did. Dedication could have been Grubb's middle name and not Dhanakaran Singh. Most of you didn't know that, right? Many times I felt Grubb didn't do justice to his voice because of his conducting. I always told him that I would have liked him to see him in front of the choir, facing the audience and doing a solo, rather than facing a choir and conducting. And every time I told him that, he just simply told me, "Vaya Mudra." So I shut my mouth. We were pretty close. I used to call him Vadyare. And when it was time to hand over the baton and move on, I had a long talk with him, and he was gracious enough to propose Augustine himself. And we created a position called Emeritus Conductor and elected Grubb. When someone close to you for over 50 years passes on, a part of you passes on with them. Within 1 week, we lost two great basses, Grubb and Billy. And if you added Dr. Samuel Kamalesan to them, Heaven's Choir will be bottom heavy. And the South Indian contingent there would be pretty strong. A Seeker song we used to do long ago comes to mind. There will never be another you. There will never be another you, Grubb. Thank you for the music.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi, for your touching thoughts and words. I call upon the President of the Madras Musical Association, Mrs. Mary Rodriguez, to address us.
Thank you, Asha. Welcome to this gathering. All the near and dear ones and all the old choristers, people with a lot of associations and people who were responsible in building this choir over the many years through and charted it through so many stormy oceans and rivers and waters. We thank you all for attending this. I met Dr. Grubb in 1989 when the choir and Madras Musical Association was just formed, and we were practicing on Tuesdays at the AMC. And Ravi Thomas and Lali had invited me and asked me to join, as they were only about 25 people at that time. So I joined, and I was awestruck at Dr. Grubb's quiet stature. I mean, man who never spoke very much, but was so conscientious and always there and on time, ahead of time. And one or two of his characteristics is one very strange character that he had was he named all of us differently from what we were called. So, and I didn't know that. Within a month, he started calling me Shanti. So I kept wondering, why would he change my name? I tried telling him my name is not Shanti, but he insisted, and he called me Shanti till now. So after many years, I went up to him and asked him, why do you call me Shanti, and why do you nickname so many people in the choir with different names? And he addresses us only by those names. And he told me, when I see you and I see various people and I give them their names, I see you as Shanti. So I call you Shanti. Then I understood he had a very different way of connecting to people. And I thought it was so beautiful that he connected to people's inner being, the inner soul of all of us. And I think that was a wonderful characteristic Grubb had. And another little anecdote about him was he was very meticulous in the way he brought his books for the choir practice. So I think it is before our show to Coventry, we were again only 25 of us traveling. He got all our books readied, bound, wrapped, and with our names on each of them. And till today, it stays with me. And I see it's so done with so much of love and care, and in such perfect condition. So that was how meticulous he was in what he had taken up. We truly will miss you, Grubb so much. I mean, there were many times you have supported me when I speak, spoken to you privately. A man of few words, but very strong. And MMA is very happy that you have left a great impression for the choir, in the choir, for the choristers. Thank you so much for all the efforts you have taken to build the choir to, after which we have taken it on further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That was so nostalgic. If there was one person who worked closely with Dr. Grubb in MMA, it was our music director, Mr. Augustine Paul, to whom he passed on the conductor's baton. I request you, sir, to share your tribute.
Thank you, Asha, and thanks to the committee for letting me speak on this occasion. Yes, as Asha pointed out, I had stayed with Grubb for about 40 years, and I met him first in the male voice ensemble choir in the very early 80s. Then 1984, Dr. Kalyan, who was my mentor, he asked me and invited me to come and play guitar for the MMA choir as they were recording a few songs for holiday radio. I was not part of the choir then. Then I went and played guitar for that occasion, and from then on I was part of the MMA. And in the year 1988, I think, when Dr. Ravi Santosham took over as president, he roped me in as a librarian. So from then on, and when Grubb arrived, I had been with Dr. Grubb as a librarian, and later as a associate music director. And it was a great era of music for me, when I had the great joy of being with Grubb in many, many occasions whenever we had concerts and rehearsals. And that time, librarian's job was not much at all. I just have to open the cupboard and bring a set of books. And from then on, it's Grubb's duty. He'll bring it in the car and take it back in the car. Books were not given to the choristers at the time. So we had practice in EMC for a little while, in the Apostolic Fellowship Chapel for a while, then at BK in Hall, then to HPI. All these 4 changes Dr. Grubb initiated due to various reasons. And Tuesdays were holy days for him. He will remind me about certain things on Monday night. And Tuesday morning, invariably, he'll drop into our accompanist's house and say, we are going to sing this, this, this. And in the evening, he'll be before time there, and he'll himself will arrange the chairs. He will not let anyone do it. And though this whole 17, 18 years of MMA, I would say Dr. Grubb's sole focus was the choir. And as pointed out earlier, he built the choir. He had to sustain the choir. It is not a choir which just floated on its own. He had to pull it. And he had to teach. He had to teach parts one by one, for the alto part, tenor part, and bass part. And he was very, very patient. And he was very, very patient with the choristers. And he taught all the parts and made sure that the concert was a success. Putting up concerts were not easy at that time. We had to get a hall for that, involved a lot of money. And for everything, he'll be very patient, and he will abide by the decisions of the committee. And it was a great learning process for me, sitting next to him in many of these meetings, and how these associations functioned. So I was so happy that I was able to associate myself with Dr. Grubb and succeed him when he retired. And as Dr. Ravi pointed out, I started my career as conductor of MMA with the blessings of Dr. Grubb. That's a great honor to be proposed by the outgoing conductor. So I'm so honored to be a part of the MMA now as a conductor. And we look back and see that Dr. Grubb has done great foundation, laying a foundation for the existing choir, which we are able to enjoy now. And we are so thankful to him for his services to MMA and the great time he gave us during the rehearsals. All jokes, all fun, and yet there was music. And let his soul rest in peace.
Thank you, Augustine, sir. I now request our Assistant Music Director, Mr. Ebenezer Arun Kumar, to speak a few words.
Hi, good evening, and thank you everyone especially the committee for giving me an opportunity to speak. Looking back at the year 1989, when Uncle took over as a conductor of MMA, I was then in college, and I was singing alto. So within 2-3 weeks, he started calling me Ebi Aka. So he had a strong connect with every chorister in the choir, and especially with me. And he was always concerned about what I'm singing, and he was always looking up to me for some notes, even though I was not singing properly. But he was always reposing a lot of trust on me to sing. So that is how the bond developed between Grubb uncle and me. And as a conductor and as a singer, I have really enjoyed my singing along with Grubb uncle. And it's been long, and I've been engaging myself in arranging chairs and organizing teas, and so uncle will be in constant touch with me to get things done. So I was volunteering myself to do that, and because it was Grubb uncle, I was even more interestedly doing, because the character was such a character that anybody would like to want to be get themselves associated with him. And such was the association with Dr. Grubb as a singer, and it was a long and I never thought I will sing along with him, and I had an opportunity to sing with a male voice ensemble and Bambiana, and it was really wonderful to sing with him. It's a totally different. I think because the bass that the girth of the bass is so wonderful. If you stand beside him and sing, it's totally a different type of enjoyment. And I've also been his patient. I've always visited him for all the skin-related issues, and uncle was always very polite and guided me correctly in all my medications. And so I have always been talking to him throughout my association regularly, and he was also talking to me. And so uncle was a conductor to me, um, and he was a doctor to me, and he was also a singer along with me in rather I would with the male voice ensemble, and he was a very good friend most of all. So many things I have learned from him. He was a man of principles, and always correct in doing things and understanding people. And there was not one in the choir who will not go away without Grubb uncle's talking or interaction. So everybody in the choir used to be in touch with him, either by talking to him regarding music or any other interaction. You will also always be concerned about the least in the choir. So that's how we built the choir, and MMA. Singing at MMA was a real pleasure, and I always look forward. And that is how he developed the choir, and as everybody said, it was a really wonderful time. And as a person, he was really a wonderful man, and a man of principles, and always correct on time. If I said I'm coming by 7:30, he'll be ready by 7:15 or 7 itself. So always he was correct in whatever he did, and it was a great association. And I really will miss him, and and as a friend, and always I've been following GAT for a long time, since the 80s, and all these songs, and I have been really a fan of them. And it was very sudden. Even last October he was here, and I went along with him to for his license renewal and all that stuff. And I can't imagine that he's not here. He's such a wonderful person. He always checks with me what I'm doing, how I am, how's my singing, how I'm doing, how is my conducting, all that. He will check with me, and he will also check with about everybody and what's happening in the music scene in Chennai. So I'll really miss him for a long, for all the time in my life. And thank you for this opportunity once again. And thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Music does a lot of things for each of us. It's uplifting, it's encouraging, it's strengthening. Let's now travel down memory lane and listen to a short video of Dr. Samuel Grubb singing at the St. Mark's Cathedral in Bangalore way back in December 2018 when he was 78 years old. He's accompanied there by his son, Avinash Grubb, at the piano.
All thy own way, Lord, all thy own way. Thou art the porter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting even still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. White and snow, Lord, wash me as snow. As in thy presence, humbly I bow. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine way. Wounded and weary, help me, I pray. Our Father, surely is thine. Touch me and redeem me, Savior divine. Till all shall see, was only always living in me. Christ glory always living in me.
We now have some former choristers reminiscing about Dr. Grubb. Here's the video.
Martha and I were devastated to hear about the sudden demise of Grubb. It was hardly 20 days ago that he was here in Chennai, and we both sang happy birthday to him. That was his birthday, and he was quite surprised as to how we knew. And we invited him, but he was too busy and we couldn't meet. And then to hear that he's no more is unbelievable. We met way back in 1968. And 53 years we have been friends. We have been singing together. We have been traveling together. We have been to several places, including Coventry, where David Wilcox called him the bottomless bass. And when we used to travel together with Handel, and we used to stay, and in the evening we used to have a lot of fun. Then I used to threaten him, Dave, if you sing one note lower, I'll kill you. Vadare, enna uira today. Na vandu ulla irukren, na unukku kila paada maten. Like that, he was such a simple, humble human being. I'll never get a friend like him. I have lost him. And it is an irreparable loss. I'll always remember that humorous side of it. Though he's such a beautiful singer, he had nothing put on his shoulder. He was always very humble. He was always very, very valiant. And he's a part of us. And he lived here alone. And whenever there was a chance that we'll meet and we'll sing, and we used to have a lot of fun together. I miss him. I really miss my friend. Wherever he is, let him live in peace, rest in peace.
In our circle of friends, we have lost our dearly beloved Grubb, our friend, a wonderful human being, humble, loving, humorous, always cracking jokes to make us laugh. The good times when he would come home to assist us during practices when we staged the Pied Piper of Hamelin. This was the first time that he was conducting a full-length musical. He loved his music, and his bass voice will always ring in our ears. Our condolences go to Pramila and Avinash. May his soul rest in peace.
We both will miss our dear Grubb. Wherever he is, we hope to meet him on that beautiful show and sing together once again. This is my wish.
Grubb, you ran the race well and finished well, my friend. The unfortunate thing in this kind of situation is that the runner never does get to witness the result like we who are left behind do. So we are responsible for highlighting your legacy by our applause of the race so well run. And that is what I will attempt to do today. Grubb was always just Grubb to me. He was part of my life for over 55 years, having sung together in almost every musical platform in Madras, starting from the Emmanuel Methodist Church Choir, to the MMA, to the Madras Vepri Male Voice Choir, which later became the Male Voice Ensemble, and of course, the GAT. We even did our stint in the film industry. But in spite of all this that we did, he somehow managed to find time to bring my wife to be, Shobha, who was just a little girl at that point in time, to choir practices on a scooter. And Grubb was naturally there at a wedding on the 8th of May of 1978. It is so hard to think that it is on that very same date, 43 years later, that he left us to go on to be with his creator. He truly was part of our family, and he held that position till the end. And now he's always going to be part of our memory. Though we had a 10-year difference between us, it never changed the nature of our relationship. And at no point did he ever use that to his advantage. I looked up to him as a doctor, till I too got to be one, and then we complemented each other as we pursued our individual specialties. But then we kept on singing together. I looked up to him as a unique bass. It was one of a kind in depth, range, quality, and control. He could literally balance an entire choir by his unmatched volume when it required, whilst also being able to just be a soft, solid foundation to a song that called for it. He had this uncanny ability to remember his exact bass part, even after 50 years. But this proved to be a challenge for me when I tried to rearrange the same song later. It was such a privilege that he joined us to form the GAT Quartet. And then we continued to travel our road together in harmony. And we kept on singing. I looked up to him as a good friend who was my go-to for so many personal matters. Grubb was an exceptional human being. I remember our early days in GAT and his moral compass being the one we followed to keep us on the straight and narrow. Looking back, I'm so grateful for that definitive limiting line that he drew around us that kept us safe during our vulnerable years. There are so many wonderful things I could say about him. But simply put, I feel so privileged to be part of his narrative. So, thank you, Grubb, for the years of music, friendship, laughter, camaraderie, and love. Thank you for giving us another pillar of musical excellence in your son, Avinash. We, though separated by oceans over the last so many years, there was hardly ever a month that passed without communication. Like Edgar Jackson said, when someone who played an important part in our life is cut off by death, we feel the pain of emotional amputation. Grubb, for me, your going will be like a phantom limb, a constant reminder of your role in my life, in our life. You will truly be missed, but remembered with respect.
It was the year 1991 that Dr. Samuel Grubb was invited to take charge of conducting the MMA choir after his deputation as a doctor in Libya. He was a well-known bass singer with an extraordinary voice and was acknowledged by the great gospel music singer Mahalia Jackson as a man with a bottomless bass. He was also instrumental in grooming and developing the Emmanuel Methodist Church choir, which he conducted, to become recognized as a very good church choir and left behind a good legacy. He accepted this task of conducting the MMA choir and thereby began the rebuilding of this fine choir that it is today. I had the privilege of singing in the MMA choir and performing these four beautiful oratorios such as Elijah, Judas Maccabeus, Samson and Delilah, and Belteshazzar, as a tenor soloist and as a chorister. On the lighter side, taking part in the excerpts from musicals and a wonderful evening entitled Over the Rainbow, and most of all, converting a beautiful piece of classical music into a musical entitled The Pied Piper of Hamlet, just to name a few. My close association with Grubb was in the year 1966, when the GAT Quartet was formed. GAT represents the names of the quartet members, Grubb, Alan, Tony, and Theophilus, which was Kalyan's middle name. After Ravi joined the group, we changed from a quartet to a quintet. We were recognized as one of the best male voice quartets in the country. This led us to perform overseas at the International Church Music Festival in Coventry, UK, then at Bern, Switzerland, and finally at Rome, Italy. At the Chicago Gospel Music Festival, we were featured with the very best of gospel music singers in USA. At the 2011 Olympics, we were featured to sing at the Sydney Opera House, and we had a wonderful fun tour of Northern Ireland and 2 beautiful concerts in Bahrain. Grubb was a person with a strong leadership qualities and had a kind and a generous heart. He was gifted with an unusual sense of humor, which we all enjoy. The nicknames that he chose for many of the choristers was hilarious. To both Lillian and myself, he was more than just a friend. He was like an elder brother who could be counted on. His passing away is a great loss to us as a family, and we know that he did wonderfully well in the field of music in the city of Chennai. As the words of this country gospel song goes, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. Thank you.
The name Grubb was part of my growing days at Emmanuel Methodist Church. It was at the age of 13 that I joined the EMC choir. When Grubb started conducting the EMC choir, he took such care and gave us all the love and confidence to sing as individuals, small groups, or as a choir. He took extra effort to teach us youngsters, which occupied a full bench in the front row. When choir practices were long, he would take the pains to see that all of us reached home safely. He always used to say that it was Reverend Dr. Sam Kamleson who had laid this mantle as choir director on him, and he was a great support in all the choir singing. I will never forget the time when I was getting ready to be married, how Grubb came with the GAT Quartet members, that is, Grubb, Kalyan, Alan, and of course Tony, to help me choose our wedding ring. When it came to choose my wedding sari, I was not able to decide on which one to take. As usual, Grubb came to my rescue and draped the different saris on himself and asked me how it looked. Then he said, if it looks good on me, how much better it will look on you. He was always fun, and there was never a dull moment when he was around. I'm sure all of you listening will agree with that. He also loved giving nicknames to many people, and that stuck to all of them to the very end. I did sing under Grubb when he was conducting the MMA, but for a short time. Before Grubb moved to Bangalore to be with the family because of the lockdown, both Tony and I would visit him at home at least once or twice a week. After sitting and talking to him for an hour or so, he would not let us go, saying, "Hardly 10 minutes have passed and you all are in such a hurry to go home." He loved making his tea as soon as Tony landed in his house. If by chance we missed visiting him, we can be sure of the number of telephone calls he would make. He was concerned about us and always kept reminding us not to go out unnecessarily during this COVID time. Every time we pass by his house for our walks, we cannot but have a teary eye. We miss all the fun and laughter as friends and as a singing group. I will never forget when Grubb got his house rebuilt. He was so excited, like a little kid asking Premila to choose the curtains and all the extra fittings with the air conditioning. One day I told Grubb, "The house looks wonderful, but the smell of the cigarette is terrible." The following week, when we visited him, he asked me, "Does my house still smell bad of cigarette?" And I told him no. And how come? Very proudly, grinning from one end to the other, he said, "I have stopped smoking." He really became a changed person, giving up all these habits of his. Grubb, seeing you standing at your house gate and saying bye to us every time we left your house is so vivid in our hearts and in our mind. Bye for now till we meet again, our good and faithful friend and an older brother.
Standing around the piano and breaking into harmony was what made our souls stay in unison in our musical journey. I remember as a young child the male voice ensemble meeting for rehearsals at our house. I used to take turns sitting on the laps of the choristers just to listen to them sing and try to learn their parts. And as usual, I would stay the longest on Dr. Samuel Grubb's lap, who I fondly refer to as Grubb Uncle. I was most enamored when I would place my ear against his chest to hear the rumble as he sang. Just as a little child's imagination can soar, I believe that his voice was generated by a motor that produced the depth in his voice. Little did I know at that time that one day I would have the privilege of not only singing alongside him in the male voice ensemble, but also be the director of the Madras Musical Association Youth Choir, while Grubb Uncle conducted the adult choir. It was a memorable experience. Choir practice with Grubb Uncle never lacked fun and humor, as he had his own explanations for every musical term in order to help the choristers remember the dynamics while singing. P was paadu. PP was paathu paadu. PPP was parvala paathu paadu. MP was meduva paadu. FF was full force or fadafat. Grubb Uncle, we will miss your humor and your personality and your voice that has etched a very special place in our hearts. Just like Grubb begins with G, so do we find the first line note on the bass clef also starts with a G as a foundation. In closing, I would like to remind all of us the words of this song that Grubb Uncle sang ever so often. Old, old Mississippi, many you have seen. Old, old Mississippi, Good friends we have been. Oh, you know my yearning burning in my heart, and you know my sadness when we part.
Hi. When I was first asked to say a few words on Dr. Samuel Grubb, I was wondering where to start, what to say, because there's so much that one could say about him. My first association with Dr. Grubb was way back in the 70s, in my late teens, uh, when I joined the EMC choir, which was one of the leading choirs in the city at that time, under his leadership. My first impression of him, with his towering personality and presence, was that of being a very stern and strict person, which had me very scared and nervy. But that impression changed very soon as he put me at ease and was just the opposite of what I thought of him. I found him so humble, affectionate, mild-mannered, and very friendly that my experience in the choir was very enjoyable and fun-filled. Also, having the other GAT members in the choir at that time was an awesome experience, just to be amongst them. Another aspect of Grubb that made the experience of the choir so enjoyable was his lively wit and humor. And apart from the good music that we enjoyed, there was such camaraderie and his ability to organize such wonderful choir picnics that even till today, most of us members vouch for that. Wonderful get-togethers too. I subsequently joined the MMA choir too under his leadership and the committee too, and had the opportunity of participating and organizing many wonderful programs in the city. Also, having the opportunity to go along with him to the ICMF program at Coventry, UK. I consider myself very fortunate and privileged to have not only sung under him in both the choirs, but just to be associated with him and enjoy a warm friendship with him that I could even call him just Grubb, in spite of the huge age difference between us, which he never seemed to mind at all, even once. I could go on and on, but would like to keep it brief. So in closing, all I would say is farewell, dear Grubb, and till we meet again someday in the future, I hope to catch up with you in the bass line, in the choir up there. Rest in peace, Grubb.
Hi, all. Greetings to one and all in the name of Jesus. I'm going to talk about Grubb Uncle. Grubb Uncle was my third choir conductor. In the year 2004, during Easter time, the MMA choir was presenting a concert in EMC Church. Arun George Annan was the accompanist for MMA at that time. I was accompanying the EMC choir under Tony Uncle's leadership and becoming very famous. Arun Anna explained his difficulty between office work, night shift, Kirk organ repair works, church works, and supporting the MMA choir. So he introduced me to Grubb Uncle, and he immediately took me in as the accompanist. Back at home and in church, many were advising me to give it think twice, Edwin, and saying that I may have to start playing secular songs also. I was at that time more focused on gospel songs. But I chose to accompany anyway, as I knew Grubb Uncle from the GAT tapes. He was part of the EMC church, and I used to listen just to his deep bass in the cassettes over and over again, and I still have those cassettes. My dad Bevan also cautioned me, saying that hymn books come flying if people don't sing properly during practice time, and that Grubb Uncle was very strict. Grubb Uncle said, "Don't worry, just come, I'll guide you." In Tamil, he used to call me Day. நான் ஒன்று பார்த்துக்கிறேன், நீ வா, நான் பார்த்துக்கிறேன்னு சொல்லுவார். I admired his conducting skills. He conducted very strongly with emotions, powerful, confident, and I played even more, even as he conducted more and more vigorously, with great strength and all. While conducting, my choirs used to come, batons used to fly. He would crack jokes right in the middle of the practice and kept the sessions strongly engaged. He took care of me very much, even picking me up and dropping me off in his car to my home. I like his Tamil colloquial slang in the music terms like PP means Pathupadu. Even as he conducts, he'll be using words to motivate the singers to sing more strongly and create some sounds to pep up the song also. He switches instructions between Tamil and English and kept the practices very happy and exciting. He sang and demonstrated the parts in both falsetto and very deep bottomless bass that inspired me to play well and also imitate the notes according to his passion. Even today I try to imitate him when I teach at school, conduct the children choir, or try to sing the bass like him. I did the great Handel's work Messiah and several works under his direction. I learned from his materials and enjoyed music a whole lot with him. The last concert I did with Grubb Uncle was a get together by GAT, and Tony Uncle organized a very beautiful concert, and Dr. Kalyan was playing and conducting. Grubb Uncle sang with his son Avinash, who is an excellent musician. I got a chance to take photos with all of them, especially the Grubb Uncle and the GAT and everybody. I miss Grubb Uncle very much now. I pray that God will comfort his family members, and I hope to see him with Jesus on my final day. Thank you.
I always dreaded days like this would come too soon. But here we are saying goodbye to you. Dr. Samuel Grubb was Grubb Uncle to me. Everything about him was unique. The way he looked, the way he dressed, his beard, even his voice. He was quite an inspiration. No one knew his struggles, no one knew his pain. Because he joked, he laughed, he sang. He always made me feel like I was 10 again. He spent a lot of time at home with Mum and Dad. I remember him with whiskey and a cigarette in hand, laughing and joking with Dad. Who sings louder? Who sings clearer? Who sings deeper? There was always an evening of banter and laughter. It was swell. Uncle Grubb, we knew you well. And when you stood with a baton in hand, I smiled, because I could see in your eyes you saying, how am I going to keep this bunch in line? But you saw it through, and with pride I say, I knew you well. Your time has come, and you've passed on by. Your song has ended, but your melody will never die.
I thank Almighty God for this special blessing to say a few words in tribute to my friend, fellow choir member, and choir conductor of the MMA, Dr. Samuel Grubb from Chennai. A dignified, deep-spirited, honorable gentleman with a deep, rich, low voice that would startle you as it did to many listeners. When I first met Dr. Grubb, a medical doctor, a second-bass singer, it was a pleasure to stop a while and listen to that amazing depth of his voice. He touched me, and made me whole. Indeed, his voice was a precious gift from God, adding to the harmonious blend of our choir and praise to God and the congregation at EMC and outside the EMC church. It was a special treat as we were also encouraged and trained by our choir master and pastor, Reverend Samuel Kamalesan, every Sunday. When I returned to Madras, it was a joyful homecoming to be included in the singing groups of Vepri Madras, and particularly privileged to be invited to sing with a prestigious group, the Madras Musical Association. Then Broadway came alive in Madras, with Grubb as conductor, as a patient listener and teacher trainer of the MMA. We had practices from on the street to South Pacific and more, and then to a choral rendition of the Maccabees. It was a time to learn new pieces, time to sing together as best as we could. Grubb cared to listen and improve our choral quality. from the Vienna woods, Pied Piper and the musical journey continued. As the good book says, he has made all things beautiful in its time. The classical musical productions were often based on fundraising projects. I have been inspired personally by Dr. Grubb and the MMA. It is said that seeds of yesterday are the flowers of today. May the sound of music uplift the heart of India through these troubled times to bring cleansing and healing to our nation. May God bless his wife Premila and Avinash and family, and with comfort and peace. Praise God.
Hello everybody. Firstly, I want to record my very deep condolences in the passing away of Dr. Samuel Grubb. He was truly a basso profundo, if you may call it. Everybody knows about it also. I don't want to talk much about his voice because everybody knows about it and we're talking about it. I would like to highlight one of his very, very great accomplishments when he was the conductor of the Madras Musical Association. After the great Padma Shri Handel Manual stepped down, there was a void for a proper director to conduct the choir of the Madras Musical Association. At that time, Mr. Solomon Howie and Mrs. Solomon Howie were very magnanimous in opening their doors for practice with a few members of the MMA at their house, and this has to be appreciated by everybody because they kept the choir afloat for many days or months. At that time, many conductors, eminent conductors in the city were roped in to try and conduct the choir of the Madras Musical Association. But somehow none of them succeeded in doing it until some brilliant mind in the committee suggested Dr. Samuel Grubb's name. And he took over the baton of the choir of the Madras Musical Association and had practices at Balar Kalvi Nilayam regularly for many years. He mustered a choir of more than 50 to 60 voices and performed several notable performances, public performances in the city. One significant piece was the Judas Maccabees, which was done by the choir of the Madras Musical Association, which stood out and was a big success. I think Dr. Grubb's contribution should be etched in letters of gold in the history of the association. He is the one who kept the choir going with a big strength of voices until afterwards when Mr. Paul Augustine took over. Dr. Grubb was a man of great leadership qualities. He was a great leader, and that is how he was able to muster and keep the more than 50 voices together for several years. If not for him, I don't know how to express it. I don't think much would have happened in the association. His contribution was very great, and he did it with utter sincerity and dedication. I would also like to place on record my deep condolences to the family of Dr. Samuel Grubb. Thank you.
A big thank you to each and every one of you who shared your thoughts. And thank you, Isaac and Prashant, for putting the video together. A picture is worth a million words. And the collage that's coming up next on Dr. Grubb has been put together by Prashant Gasper. If there are any former choristers at the meeting here today and who would like to speak a few words, you may do so now. Please unmute yourselves and speak for a couple of minutes. This will be followed by eulogies from existing choristers who have already shared their names for the same. May I call upon Mrs. Susan Simon to share her thoughts?
Dr. Samuel Grubb was a choir conductor when I joined the Emmanuel Methodist Church choir at the age of 10. He was the one who taught us the basics of singing. On a lighter note, when we would sing off the pitch, he would say, "Enna, நீங்க எல்லாம் வேற பாட்டி பாடுறீங்களா?" And when we would sing wrong notes, he would say, "Confident tappa padringale." He was full of wit and sometimes came out with condescending remarks, but all the while we took it in good spirits because we knew he meant the best for us. Can't forget that clap and his thundering voice when he would try to assemble us for practice. You couldn't imagine. Sometimes, to teach us something, he would sing the soprano part in falsetto, and that would make us laugh. As youngsters, we cannot forget the choir picnics by the seaside with biryani cooked at the venue and the carol singing, when we would ensure that on the last note for the last song, when it was almost daylight, we were still on pitch. Absolutely accurate pitch was what he was sticky about, and that's why he's still on pitch even at 78, a benchmark for any chorister. Another important aspect about him was that he was very particular about expression to bring out the meaning of the lyrics. Apart from the singing, he cared for his choristers. He would write out prescriptions for all of us and would ensure that we were directed to the right physician for treatment. We also remember how, as the oldest in the group, he would take us all for tea and samosas at Ahmed Restaurant at the beginning of Perambur Barracks Road. Our lives were carefree and beautiful, and not to forget the tea after the evening service at Dufton Cafe. After that, life took us different ways, and when I came back to singing, after staying in different parts of India, he was the choir director of the MMA. I saw a different conductor this time because he was more concerned about the music, and there were too many people in the choir to pay individual attention to. But from my side, I can say I was lucky to have learnt the basics of singing from a legend. Apart from the warmth and wit and care we all enjoyed. Thank you, Dr. Grubb, for all that you have given us, and you will live in our hearts throughout our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Asha? Asha?
Yes, yes,
Rajan here.
yes, Rajan. You would like to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, please. Can I talk?
Please go ahead.
For me, Dr. Samuel Grubb was very close to me as a family member or as a friend. The last time he came to my house, we had a fantastic get together when Kalyan, everybody was down in city, and Grubb was enjoying himself. He couldn't even walk. He just came out from the car, just walked inside the house. Then he was there for nearly 2 hours in my house. And he was such a jolly person, which nobody can deny. And not only that, apart from his fantastic musical talents as a singer, he was a humble, very loving, very friendly, caring person. This is what one example is. See, when MMA went to Bangalore along with Grubb, it so happened that when we went to Bangalore, I had the sad news of the demise of my father-in-law in Chennai. So I went and told Grubb, my father-in-law's passed away, I want to go. You know what he said? Seekaram poda, kalim poda, train poda. Then he called me again. Vada, kaasa vechirikada. That time I was not much, didn't have much money. He just put his hand in his pocket and he pulled out a bundle of notes and just gave it to me and said, Dada, po. So shocking. When I landed in Chennai, I counted, it was $1,200 at those times. And he never counted also. So he was such a loving, caring personality. And as a choir conductor of MMA, you won't believe, he used to go home, sit and make the files for the choir members. He himself will sit down, stitch, and of course, Abhi was helping him. And he used to bring it every week to the choir practice. And he made a point that every fellow returns a book when he goes back. He'll do that. So he was very strict and very loving. At the same time, his voice, rang all over the world, in fact. So I had a wonderful time with Grubb when we went to Coventry and Chester, because again, it's Australia. But Grubb is something very, very close to my heart and my family. And as a doctor, he will never take things seriously when you go and see him. Hey, that's what he says. And as he says that musical notations, MP, Medua Pade, PP, Patu Pade, that's what his rendition was of the musical notes. So we really enjoyed Grubb. We miss you, especially I, as a very close friend of you, miss you very lot. Hope to see you very soon at the other show. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan. We thank and acknowledge the family members of Dr. Samuel Grubb who are here with us today. I request Ms. Mallika Surendra, his niece, followed by his son, Mr. Avinash Grubb, to speak. Over to you, Mallika.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having invited me. My perspective is going to be something totally different from all that was shared earlier, and it was very informative for me. Thank you. It was good to hear so many good things spoken about Mama. Now, I am Mallika Surendra, his eldest sister's daughter. And therefore, as I speak, I will be referring to him as Kutti Mama, as he was fondly known in the family. He was known as Kutti in the family, Kutti Thambi actually, because there was another uncle above him, and he was called Periya Thambi. So he was called Kutti Thambi, and we all called him Kutti Mama. And my children call him Kutti Tata. So it's all about Kutti Mama. As I speak now, I just can't believe that he's gone away. He's no longer here with us. It is a realization which is taking a bit of time to sink in, because we didn't have the finality of witnessing his funeral. Now, I'd like to start with a little anecdote about how he got his name, Samuel Grubb. I'm not talking about the weird name, Grubb. I'm talking about the normal name, Samuel. And this is what my Gama shared with me. And she said, Mali, you know, I prayed and I asked God to give me a child. Now I was wondering what this all was about, because she already had 7 children and she had 10, 2 died, and Kuti Mama was the 8th. So I was wondering why on earth would Gama pray for another kid? But she has prayed, and when Mama was born, she has christened him Samuel, because she said, I prayed like Hannah and God gave me this child, and therefore I'm going to call him Samuel. And he was indeed a very special, gifted man, gifted person, a gift to Gama, a gift to all of us. Now, coming to his life, I really don't know much about his musical journey, but we were a part of it. He was a person who had his life neatly compartmentalized, and his music and his personal life didn't really mix. So, but we were a part of his musical journey. He kept us posted about all the events, and he made sure that we attended every one of them. And so I remember in my growing up years, he sang at college where mommy was working, Stella Maris, and I was a student, and the Gats came and they sang there, and they have come there quite a few times because the nuns really loved his singing. And I have attended his shows at the USIS, at the British Council, and of course the massive show in Music Academy. Those were very glamorous shows indeed. Now, one interesting thing about Mama was that he was a frequent visitor at our home. And I would call him really a midnight caller. He would come at very odd hours of the night. Actually, now looking back, it was really not very odd. It was around 8:30 or 9. But we would have all dropped off to sleep. And he would come and he'll make sure that he woke up the entire family. And then he'll say, Akka endringa. And he'll make Malli, Renu, Ella endri. And we'll all have to get up. And then all that he wanted was tea. And so, according to me, in the middle of the night, we will be brewing cups of tea for him, which he enjoyed. I never saw him as a foodie, but he drank a lot of tea. And as a medical practitioner, of course, he treated the entire family, possibly several generations of us, Gama and Tata and his siblings and his nieces and nephews, and then the great grandkids as well. So, it was not just for skin-related issues. By the time my children had grown up, he was into giving them advice on cosmetic treatment and all that. The children used to love going to him because he was full of fun and such an entertainer. And then 1975, December, he got married. He got married in the very same Mark's Cathedral, the video which we watched, the last video which he had done with Avi. And he got married there. And interestingly enough, I was asked to be the bridesmaid at that wedding. And it was a very, very, very interesting thing, because I was at college and made me feel very important to be the bridesmaid for Pramila. And one of the very fond memories, which I will hold close to my heart always, would be walking behind Kuti Mama down the aisle as he and Pramila walked on in Mark's Cathedral. And then when I got married, there were 2 memories which I again hold very close to my heart, because my mother just declared she has to go to the beauty parlor. There was only one parlor in Madras at that time. And she said, I cannot send her with any of her giddy-headed friends. So Nipo. And then I said, Mom, Kuti Mama said, yes, he'll be escorting you. And he did come. And he sat outside that beauty parlor for 2 hours. And then when I walked out, I was sure he was going to make one of his jokes, because he would tease us mercilessly. And when I came out, and he gave me a lovely compliment, and that was nice. And I had asked Mommy to ask the Gats to sing at the wedding, and they did sing the priestly blessing at the wedding, which is a wonderful memory to cherish. And he was very dear to my father and my mother. And when my mother, he was with us, he shared in all our ups and downs. He was there for the family. And my mother was diagnosed with a malignancy, and she needed to have a major surgery. I was young, I had 2 young children. It was very shattering. And Dad was the medical superintendent of Kalyani. And then Kuti Mama arrived right at the morning of the surgery, and he was there with us throughout. He removed the stress, the tension, the fear. Kalyan, incidentally, was her anesthetist. And so Kalyan, Kuti Mama, and they were around us. And that was such a support. And even more recently, when my father was very ill and he had a bothersome skin problem, he told me, tell Kuti to come and see me. I want to see Kuti. Then I called Kuti Mama. He said, hey, I'm not able to drive the, what do I do? Then one of the children went and they brought him. And he spent a long time with my father, reassuring him, comforting him. And my father was so...
Come down.
He made Dad feel comfortable. And then he moved on. And the last that we saw him as a family here in Chennai, and I'm speaking for all of us, his nieces and cousins in Chennai, he came for my aunt's funeral. She just died. His younger sister's funeral, just 2 months or 3 months back. And he drove all the way from Bangalore and he hit the church straight. And he attended the funeral. And that was the last time I saw him. He sat next to me and he was talking. Little did I know, little did I even dream that that would be the last time. I was talking to my mama, and he's connected with all of us, and then he went back. To me, he looked quite well. And then we got the shattering news that he has just vanished. He has vanished, leaving behind a real empty space in all our lives. And it is like the rainbow has lost its color or dim faded a bit, and he's gone. And it's a surrealistic feeling that he's no longer there. But then his lovely voice will keep resonating in our hearts for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Avinash, may I request you to speak?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I really don't know what to say. Haven't planned anything as such to talk about this evening. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this meeting for Dad. I think I'll just share a few memories which I remember from Madras, as I still like to call it, right up till the last few years where Dad was just next door, and he was just always there. And I think that was probably the biggest blessing I think all of us at home will remember, because he was just there with us. And, for every discussion, he had something funny to say. For my music, he was always encouraging me. He would ask me what I'm working on. So I think I would start right back in the 90s when we came back from Libya. The funny thing is, I still remember Uncle Handel taking us in his car for dinner. And, Dad was talking to him about conducting the MMA. And then, Handel looked at me and said, what is this boy doing? Is he learning music? And then I had a few years gap, when I was in Libya, because there was no music there, actually. So my mom said, yes, he's getting back to the piano. Then Handel just smiled at me and said, hope to see you playing someday. And then Dad looked at me and said, you can't play anything, any nonsense for him. He's a fantastic musician. And I remember that very vividly, because Uncle Handel had a Fiat then. And we all squeezed in at the back, Mom, Dad, and me. And Uncle Handel was in the front with his driver. That was something which stuck in the memory. And I remember it even today, this morning, when we all came back. Dad was very, very, very organized. That's something I struggle to grapple with at times when I get very frustrated with work. I remember him sitting and with me at doing homework at night, and he would peep into my homework at times, and then he would go back to the music, and and then suddenly he would say, can you play this little phrase for me? Can you play that for me? Can you pitch this note? I think having learned every single thing on his own without YouTube, without her any tutorials, was still amazes me even till today. When I showed him some music, which he would always love to see, the organ music, especially because it's 3-stage music. So that was something I still sometimes grapple with, how organized he was. He was very, very, very well organized. And yes, the GAT quartet will always be close to my heart, because I remember all the late night practices. And I still remember at Ravi Uncle's house one day, they were practicing till some really late hour in the night. And I had come back from school, but I wanted to come with them. I think that is because Kalyan Uncle had also come down. So I slept off on the chair. And, I heard then all of them saying, let's sing a little softly, because, I've gone to sleep. And I just dozed off then. So I remember those times, those late nights. And I think, that dedication was, it was just probably just by a hair's breadth. He was there for us. He was always there for us. He loved his music, and he was always committed to that till the very end, to the last detail. He would not leave any note untouched. Apart from that, I remember when Uncle Rajivan was accompanying the choir. Uncle Rajivan and I used to have a lot of jokes, and I used to be really scared of Dad, because he was very strict. He never used to let me, be very loud at practices. I still remember something funny, which I think I should share with all of you all. Over the Rainbow, if you remember, I don't remember who was singing the song from The Sound of Music. How do you solve a problem, Maria? So Rajiv and Uncle and me were just joking around, and then I said, they're so quiet on stage, Uncle. They're like mice. He said, mice, Appa. Then he said, there are 3 of them. I said, yes, there are 3 of them. So after they finished singing, how do you hold a moonbeam in your hand? I told Rajiv, Uncle, just play 3 blind mice. So he played 3 blind mice at the rehearsal, and that was so funny. Dad looked and glared at our direction, and I was so amused. And that's one of the funniest things I remember at practice, when I was watching the practice for Over the Rainbow. Many years later, of course, I'd always wanted him to sing at St. Mark's, and somehow, when a friend of mine asked me to help with some fundraising for the Leprosy Mission Trust India, I told Dad about it and said, please, can you come and sing? And within a week, he had packed everything, and he was here, and he said, okay, what shall we do together? So I told him, I'd like you to sing the song. He touched me, because it's so relevant to the theme of leprosy and Christ touching the leper and healing him. And he said, sure, let's do it. And I think the day he came to practice in church, the entire choir of St. Mark's was there because they just heard that he was coming. I was shocked because me and a colleague of mine, Nino, handled the choir, and sometimes we don't have a full audience, because it's church choir and it's convenience. It's not like the MMA back in the day. But the entire choir was there in full attendance because they just wanted to listen to him. And then he came very, very calmly, and he just said, "Okay, when do we start? What do we do?" And he just said, "I leave everything up to you." I'm really glad I did that because singing that song and "Have Thine Own Way, Lord," "Have Thine Own Way" was his own choice. He said, "I'd like to sing this." So I remember, again, he said, "I want everything on a big A3 size paper. I want everything nice and clear. I want to see the notes. I want to see the words, everything." So I remember doing it about 3 times and darkening the script until he was satisfied with it. But it was a joy. It was an absolute joy to do that. And needless to say, I'm so glad we did that concert together. The next year, he actually wasn't in good shape to sing. We practiced, but he said, "I don't think I'll sing this year. I'll listen to you." 2018 is also a very special year because after we finished the concert, the GAT was getting together and singing at EMC. So I remember him saying, "Can you somehow come?" So that afternoon, that morning, actually, I finished work at office. I handed over whatever I could to the team, and I drove down to Chennai. And I still remember squeezing in Dad, Kalyan uncle, I think Auntie, and Auntie Susan. All of us squeezed into the car, and we went straight to church and we performed. That was something really special. I will never forget. Apart from that, I think he was very funny at home. The last thing we remember is, he was teaching my son maths, and he's still written a lot of this mathematics table on a little whiteboard we have at home, and I don't think we're going to be rubbing that off for a long time to come. He took my mom to hospital recently, and he was fine actually. I think towards the last few months, he was slowing down. And even after lockdown ended, and I said, "I'm going to church, for practice. Would you like to come listen and take a walk?" And he said, "You show me the finished product when it's ready." I used to say, "Yeah, but it's almost finished, but I'm just going to be practicing a little bit." He said, "No, I'll come another time." So he was slowing down towards the end. But I think here, one of the nicest things we'll remember is that him just being there and, being a silent listener. He was never obtrusive in any way. He would always wait for us to finish and, always give something nice to say about everyone. Another thing which I would probably like to say is that he never criticized anyone. There were people who did a lot of wrong, but he would never criticize anyone. He would say, if they're like that, they're like that. Just don't bother about it. He would never criticize anyone, and he was very loyal to his friends. And I'd like to thank everyone who has been calling. I'm sorry if I've missed some calls. It's been a very, very difficult time for us over here. Dad went so suddenly that we're all struggling to come to terms with it over here. So thank you everyone who's been calling, who's been sending messages and praying for us as well. Thankfully, my mom and me are kind of out of the COVID woods right now. We are back home and we're recovering well. And so on that note, I'd like to thank everyone again. And I think the videos which we have, all the things that remind me of him, most of all, I'm really thank God. Thank the Lord for giving me a father like my dad. I would have no other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avinash and Malika, for sharing your thoughts with us. I now call upon Mr. Alan Satyadev from the GAT to share a few words.
The best thing about Grubb, as far as I was concerned, was that being part of the GAT and having him stand right next to me for more than 40 years every time we sang was the greatest experience in my life. I could literally feel the vibration of his voice going through my body every time I stood next to him. It was an unbelievable experience. And I literally used to kind of snuggle up to him every time so that I could get that feeling. In the early days when I was in IIT, many of you have said already that he was a very caring person, and Grubb was. He always took me back to IIT after rehearsals. And on the way, of course, we used to stop and have a cup of tea. And this was one of the greatest times I had with him because we used to discuss a lot of different things, all about music, about life in general. And he never, ever said no to taking me back to college on any given day. Every time we traveled together, Grubb was always there. I remember when we came out of Coventry Cathedral, it was the first time the GAT had sung outside of India. He literally grabbed me and I saw this big grin on his face. He said, "We did it. Yes, Grubb, we did it. And I hope that when you get there, or you are there already, you will do it in heaven too. Thank you so much for everything you gave us. And thank you so much for everything you've given to the GAT." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I now request Mr. Kishore Das, Vice President of the MMA, to share his tribute.
Good evening, everybody. What can I say about Dr. Grubb? I, as a kid from 1989, when he joined the MMA as a conductor, I had an association to be with him. Right at that time, my uncle, Mr. Haricharan Das, was the treasurer for the Madras Musical Association. Solomon uncle was the secretary, and Tony uncle, everybody knew. Even though I'm not a person part of the choir, but I was always a part of the choir from outside. So I enjoyed a lot of his conducting in BKN. Whenever at the time as a treasurer, my uncle was the treasurer, so I used to go to collect the membership fee from the choir members, go to the BKN, sit there and watch his conducting, his music. And over the years, after I also took the treasury post from my uncle, he was encouraging a lot. Everybody had a lot of association with him musically. Out of the music side, even though I'm also a musician by heart, out of the music side of singing in the choir, not singing in the choir, I'm sorry, I had a lot of good contact, a lot of good association with Dr. Grubb. And he always used to come to meet my uncle, who was also a good friend of him, Mr. Haricharan Das. Unfortunately, we missed him in the last year on the same month, 6th May. It's already 1 year gone. My uncle is no more. It's very irony that Dr. Grubb also passed away in the month of May in 2021. I don't have any words to say. That wonderful times I had with Dr. Grubb when he was conducting or when he was coming to musical. As everybody said, he was a lover of tea, and whenever he used to come to musical, we used to order Buhari's Irani tea, and he loved to have that. And he always used to encourage me of whatever I do, and he used to guide me how to go about and how to not on the music side, little bit of how to administration side and all. Whatever he knew, he used to always guide me. And he was, as everybody rightly pointed out, he was a fun-loving person. Even though I had not very closely associated with him in his personal life, but whenever I had an opportunity to meet him on the social gatherings or in the MMA concerts, and many a times, he always used to encourage me and always used to greet me with a fantastic smile of his own. Really, really we miss Dr. Grubb. And when Mr. Augustine Paul took from over him also, he was coming off late, and he was. We knew that he was conducting him was his always been a very passion to his heart, and definitely age was catching on him, and even though that just age was just a number, but he was always young by heart, and always used to give a lot of. He used to cut a lot of jokes, as everybody says. Many have got a lot of opportunities to hear more with him. But whatever little bit I had association on with Dr. Grubb, I always used to enjoy. And thanks to Solomon uncle, Tony uncle, especially Dr. Ravi Santosham uncle, Dr. Ravi, many times we had a gathering at Dr. Ravi Santosham's house also, as he was the president of the Madras Musical Association. He always used to talk a lot, and he always used to encourage. It's a wonderful feeling every time when Dr. Grubb was around. Really, we miss him, and I really pray from the deep of my heart to rest his soul in peace, and hope with his blessings we take the MMA to the next level. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Thank you so much, Kishore, for your words. To deliver the concluding address, I invite our secretary, Mr. Samuel Prabhakar, and after his address, we would have Abide With Me.
Asha, thank you. Ms. Asha Mathan is our treasurer of the Madras Musical Association. Thank you, Asha, for a fantastic job this evening. And Avinash, on behalf of the Madras Musical Association, we offer our deepest condolences to you and to your mother. And you're in our thoughts and our prayers. And as our patron, Dr. Ravi Santosham, mentioned, it's we must acknowledge the passing of Mr. Billy John, which was also a shocking thing. And our hearts go out to his wife and his two sons, Jim and Jack. And on a personal level, Grubb uncle was a legend to me, growing up in Madras and listening to all the choirs. But getting to know him in the early 90s at Emmanuel Methodist Church, honor and privilege, I should say. He would come every evening to the church for evening service regularly every evening, and he'd sit in one of the pews in the end. I heard a story that somebody was mentioning that in the end of the service, we would sing one verse of Abide With Me, and this person is a bass, and he was singing that evening along with everybody else, and suddenly he heard somebody singing one octave lower, and he turned around and saw, and it was Grubb uncle singing. And all the fame and respect he commanded and all that, he was a very simple, humble person. Knowing Grubb uncle since I joined the choir in 2000, would help him with the books and other things. And we only understood that he was a man of dedication, commitment, sincerity, hard work, organization, humility, tremendous humor, whatnot, the list goes on and on. And after he became the conductor emeritus, we would visit him in his home and hang out in the nights, talk and have fun, and he would tell all the old stories. And he would call me particularly to ask doubts on handling the cell phone. It was when the cell phone was coming out, and he wanted to know which model to buy and to go through the menu and all that. A few years back, for his birthday in March, we planned to take a cake and go to his home and surprise him. Augustine was there, and Bennett, and Ebi, of course, Ravi Titusana and myself. I don't know if anybody else was there. And we said, Uncle, happy birthday and all that. And we lit the candle, put it on the cake, and then we sat around and he said, now what should I do? Typical of him. And then we made him blow the candle, and then we had a good chat. It was a good time to remember. So we used to visit him now and then, and he would also give us some insights on how to handle things. Those were great times. It was Rajanana who called me that night and said about Grubb uncle's passing on, and it was quite shocking. And I immediately told Jayanti, my wife, if anybody doesn't know that, and I told her to check with Avinash immediately, and she confirmed it. Avinash confirmed it. And to send the message out to the committee and to the choir, I was quite overwhelmed, a little emotional, and didn't expect that. Abhi was constantly in touch with Grubb uncle, visiting him and getting things for him all these years, so many things. And we would ask Abhi only about Grubb uncle and how he's doing, etc. But we didn't expect this. But end of the day, we only want to thank God for him, for who Grubb uncle was, who he meant to all of us, connected with each one of us on a very personal level. Thank God for him, for his life, for his talent, for his legacy. And I must also say a big thanks to all our senior members who joined here today, people who were in the choir, MMA choir earlier. And as Dr. Keith Gammon mentioned, the seeds which you planted are flowering now, bearing fruit. And we right now here in this phase of MMA, we hope to plant the right seeds so that the future generations would bear fruit, would yield the fruit, and would enjoy the fruit. So thank you from Solly uncle, Martha auntie, and Tony uncle, and Dr. Kalyan, and Dr. Kalyan, Mr. Kalyan Jr., so many people. You have done so much for the choir. Whether you were in the committee, you were not in the committee, we don't know. People who are not in the committee also have contributed. I know for sure Mr. Lionel Ignatius. I've heard stories of what all he has done. Handwriting, hand copying music for everybody with carbon copies. So you would not have copiers those days. So thank you for all that you have done, and it's a blessing for us. And we hope to take it forward in a beautiful way and leave a legacy. So once again, I must say thanks to Prashant for putting all the videos together and compiling all that, and Isaac for coordinating, and thank you everybody for sending your videos, and thank you for joining today. And let's continue to uphold each other in prayer and continue to stay safe during these difficult times. I don't think I have anything else. So thank God for Grubb.